In this video, we will be talking about addition and subtraction, specifically looking at word problems. For the first semester, again, we'll be talking about problems that are within 10, and then the second semester, the students will be working on problems within 20. In the previous video, we talked about fact strategies, and we do want to embed word problems as sort of a scenario to set up working on those strategies. This is where this is actually the focus. The focus is on solving the word problems by the students. So we will be discussing TEKS 1.3b, 1.3e, 1.3f, 1.5d, and 1.5f. The rest of the TEKS will all be embedded within as we working with the addition sign or the equal sign and working on those basic fact strategies and students explaining which strategies they use to solve a word problem. So we're going to start out by talking about the first TEK, about the students actually solving the word problems. When students are solving word problems, they can use any type of object, they can use any type of manipulative that might be available for them, and they can also draw pictures. And here's a sample of some student work that you can see that they were given a story problem and they had their drawing. And they may have also had the objects on there. They were given 10 frames, they used a number line. The only thing on this page to discourage that we do not do is do the circling of the information for the students. We can help guide them to those, but we also as teachers want to do our modeling of pulling the information out. But this allows you to see how the students can write the number sentences as well. Students in first grade are not going to rely on facts only. So their page should look something similar to this, where they've drawn some pictures, maybe they used some type of manipulative, but their focus is not just on this equation and coming up with an answer. They should have objects to use or a picture to draw. We want to make sure that when we provide them with story problems or a word problem, that we're providing a variety of word problems. We can just take off the multiplication and division down here at the bottom. But in first grade, we want to make sure that students are working on joining problems, they're working on separating problems, and they're working on comparing problems. So by working on the joining and the separating, that's also going to encompass the part whole word problems that could come up. So we want to make sure that we're providing a variety of types of word problems for the students. And also for you to note that the missing add-in or the missing term can be any one of the three parts of the number sentence. So we don't always want to focus on our word problems having the answer at the end. So this is cognitively guided instruction information, and you can ask us about this if you want any more information on where you can find this exact sheet again. We also want to make sure that as we're providing students with information, the majority of our word problems are going to look something very similar to this. There's a sentence, another sentence, and then a question that the students are going to find the information or what they're looking for. We also want to make sure that we provide students with story problems that give them a diagram or a chart that they're going to have to pull the information out in order to answer a question. So this might be just a very simple chart that they might be given, and then there might be a question saying how many flowers are in the garden, how many more daisies than tulips are in the garden, how many tulips and roses are in the garden. But we're not just giving them data or information within sentences, so we want to vary how they're given that data. Students are also going to need to explain their strategy that they used. So if we go back to this original student's question about the peanuts, we would have the student tell us, you know, where did they start drawing, how did they use the 10 frame, how did they represent it on the number line, but we want them to explain their strategies. This is also given to students on this page a representation to show how they could represent their word problem. They can represent it using concrete, pictorial, they can represent it using number sentences. We can also have the students use a part whole model, and it might be something that we as teachers are going to start off with first and model how they could take that part whole model and use it in order to help with their word problems. So we could provide them or model a part whole model that looks like this. Using the part whole model just might help the student see if there was a missing part or if there was an add-in that was left out, where that might go, and help them determining if they are adding or if they're subtracting. Just note, it's just a good kind of rule of thumb to make sure that we're not putting our line at the bottom of the parts right in the center, so the students start to see that these boxes can actually represent a value of something, that one number is larger than the other, but right in the center is going to give the impression that they're both the exact same amount. As you're coming up with word problems, if you are specifically wanting to focus on students within a certain fact strategy, then write the word problems that will guide them to using that certain fact strategy. So like doubles plus 1, making 10, and it's just going to help them get that practice in. So you're kind of doing two things at one time. You're working on solving word problems, but you're also working on those fact strategies. Students will also be working on generating a word problem from a number sentence. So if students are just given this number sentence, 3 plus something equals 7, we would want them to create a story that represents this problem. So students could tell us a story that Anna had 3 cats, some more entered her yard. She now has 7 cats. How many entered the yard? This is just allowing the students an opportunity to sort of show their creativity, but we want to make sure that the word problem is modeling the actual number sentence that's provided for the students. So we wouldn't want the students to tell us a story that there were 7 cats, 3 more came into the yard, how many cats does she have now? It's not representative of the situation that's established in the number sentence. So students are going to have to do some creating of number problems. If they're struggling with this, just giving them a number sentence and they're just kind of sitting there, start giving them scenarios. Ask them, what's your favorite animal? And then they can tell you that their favorite animal is a dog. And then you might ask them, well, what can happen with that dog? Well, I can get the dog some food. Okay, well, what can we tell a story about getting the dog some food? And just kind of probe them with those sort of noun questions about the thing that's happening in the story, and then a setting, just to kind of give them a little push towards working on those story problems. So the last part of this talk is going to be on QT for first grade. We do QT in kindergarten all the way through 4th grade. And in kindergarten and first grade, the expectation is that the teacher is doing the modeling. So as we're modeling how we want students to solve, we want to make sure that we're being consistent in our expectations and consistent with what we write down for students. We want to make sure that as the teacher, we're modeling pulling the information out. We can certainly mark up in the problem up here, but we want to pull the information out for the students. Students in first grade do not have to do QT on their own. So we want to make sure that now we're not requiring them to fill in any boxes. We're not requiring them to find out what the cue is and write it down. If we question them, that's where we want to see their use of QT. So we're going to take this problem. Matt jumped 3 feet. He then jumped 2 feet. How many feet did Matt jump? Always make sure that you're starting out by reading the entire problem first, and then start asking your questions. Boys and girls, what are we looking for? We're looking for how many feet Matt jumped. Perfect. So our question is feet. We do not need to write the entire sentence down. It's just something very short that goes back to what the question's asking us for. If students want to write feet jumped, that would be fine as well. All right, so let's look at our very first sentence. What information can we find about the amount of feet that Matt jumped? Matt jumped 3 feet. What information can we get from that? And we would finish this by writing 3 feet. Okay, let's look at the next sentence. He then jumped 2 feet. And so we would have the students help us understand that we're going to write down 2 feet. And then we're going to talk about our plan. Our plan is where we determine what action is happening in the story. Notice we didn't focus anything on keywords. This entire word problem has no keywords in it. So we want to make sure that we're not looking for keywords, we're not stressing that for the students, that we're looking at what was the action that happened in the story. So we can talk to the kids. Well, notice that Matt jumped and then he jumped again. What do you think we're doing with those 2 numbers if we want to find out how many feet he jumped all the way from the beginning to the end? Oh, we're combining. Perfect. So when we're combining 2 things, what are we doing? Oh, we're adding. So our plan could be to add, and that's all that we need to write down for that. The A is our answer. This is where we're actually going to do our solving. And remember, our students can either use pictures or objects in order to solve. So we're going to go ahead and we can model for the students. Okay, boys and girls, we can write our number sentence to help us show what we're doing. 3 plus 2 equals. 3 plus 2 is the same as. And we can use objects. So we can put the 3 here and add our 2 more feet. We could build it in a 10 frame to continue with that structure that we talked about in the first video. And so we actually use the object. So when I get to my answer that I'm checking, I could see that it is 5 feet. And this is where we want the students to move on and still can check. Let's check and see how many did we get. So I can actually make a picture. He jumped 3 feet and then he jumped 2 more feet. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're just modeling to show that there is another way that we can solve this problem. Just solve it in another way for the check. Make sure that your check is just not, oh, did I get it right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want to do something different. So for Cutie Pack for first grade, it's about teacher modeling, teacher asking students questions in order to help them get to the steps of thinking. Cutie Pack is how I think through a problem. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us or check out your instructional talk page for addition and subtraction.